Greetings everybody from Porto, Portugal at the Industry 4.0 and MES version 2.0. I'm here with Augusto Vilarinho, the head of sales of critical manufacturing. We're talking about the latest in MES. Maybe let's start a little bit on how, or from a business development perspective, are manufacturing now viewing MES as a strategic differentiator, or is it still seen as an operational necessity?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question because we've been hearing in this summit a lot about it. So what I hear in this conference and what I hear in all our customers in all the meetings that I have is that the ones that consider MES as strategic are the ones that succeed in an MES implementation and in an MES journey. The ones that just see it as a kind of an obligation or something that their customers are forcing them to do, normally those projects are not nice projects, and those projects don't bring the benefits that the MES should bring to the plant and to the manufacturing facilities where this MES is deployed. So MES as a backbone of the Industry 4.0 needs to be seen as strategic, as any other strategic component of a factory, from the building to the machines and to the other systems that support the manufacturing processes and the manufacturing optimization. So definitely, the ones that see MES as strategic are the ones that succeed in their journey. Yeah.
Thank you, Augusto. Now, how do customer expectations for MES have changed over the last couple of years, and especially as the more manufacturing aim to build data products and not just automated workflows?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the MES as it was 20 years ago, it was a data collection system, a transactional system, and a system that would connect to something, either machines or other types of systems. Nowadays is one of the essential components of the data acquisition and the data transformation, but can only be perceived to its full extent if it's complemented with the additional data contextualization. So it's when you look at the MES or at the manufacturing operations management, you have to look at it from let's say tracking, traceability, quality, maintenance, and optimization as a whole, but with all the other additional data components that in the meantime came as a reality. So with a lot of digital transformation projects in between, you have much more sensors providing data, machines that are much more advanced and that are basically providing and generating tons and tons of information. And when we look at the essential components of a digital transformation, where MES is definitely one of them as the traditional definition, we can only take the most advantage of it if we contextualize it with the additional data that in the meantime we generate from a manufacturing facility. So the MES data contextualized with the additional data that comes from the physical devices or other systems is the essence nowadays of an effective and efficient, let's say, operational solution.
Thank you, Augusto. Now, Walker Reynolds mentioned something this morning, that digital transformation, or 98% of the project in digital transformation starts in MES. What about the companies that don't have an MES?
Yeah. The companies don't have an MES. They may be generating data. They may be creating a lot of reports. But if they don't have an MES, and we heard today from Jeff Winter as well, and from somebody else in the stage, that Excel is probably still the most used MES. But this Excel don't provide you basically all the assets that an MES can provide you to give you the context of the data that you are utilizing. I have to insist on that because it's not sufficient that you are just generating data from process A and generating data from process B. You need to understand at what time this data was generated, who processed this manufacturing lot or that manufacturing order, where the order was coming from by utilizing these components from this supplier or from that supplier, how much time was taken to do a test on that manufacturing order, and so on. So all these little things that an MES needs to capture to let's say a very reasonable extent of detail are the ones that provide this contextualization that only an MES can provide. And you heard from Walker Reynolds, that is more than renowned person to talk about the subject. You heard it from other speeches from Alfa Laval, for example, that moved from a completely paper-based solution to or situation to an MES that was deployed throughout the time. That they embraced all the resistance that they had because people wanted to keep working with paper, but they had the data from the machine, from the other processes, but they had no place where they could consolidate and contextualize this data. You just heard it a few minutes ago from Jabil. The Jabil CIO was talking about, okay, we are in a long journey for a digital transformation of 100 plus factories, and MES is one piece of it. But the data and the data contextualization and how we capture and how we contextualize it is an essential piece of this digital transformation.
Thank you for the insights. Now, you work across regions and many verticals. What surprises you the most about where Industry 4.0 maturity is accelerating the fastest and why?
Yeah. Well, I've been working in different, what we call market segments, from high-tech electronics or semiconductor to what we call more manual processes in industrial equipment or let's say manual assembly processes. And some of those industries have already thought about digital transformation a long time ago. So an industry like the semiconductor industry has been investing significantly in such matters since, let's say, more than 20 years. And nowadays, I would just say a change in a yield, for example, in a yield component. I want to improve 1% of the yield in a semiconductor fab. This is a huge investment because a lot of these processes, it's a capital intensive industry and so on. A lot of these processes are already optimized, or let's say were partially optimized to a point. So this change from a little improvement on an industry that is already, let's say, quite mature, you don't see it immediately like this. Where you see the momentum, where you see these big changes of 10% improvement in an indicator and so on, are in other industries that traditionally had very high margins, that, well, good or bad, they did not need to optimize themselves so much because they were getting a lot of money. But nowadays, this world doesn't exist anymore. So in the more industrial, discrete manufacturing processes that were typically manual, even in medical devices where we have a strong presence as well, we see a lot of manual processes, still paper-based, and they are a highly regulated market. And when we enter into a digital transformation program for such organizations in the medtech arena, you see dramatic improvements where we penetrate with not only the data management portion and data contextualization, but also with the different components that make it in terms of connectivity with advanced automation capabilities, the MES portion from, let's say, the pure definition of MES, but also the data platform and the data management perspective. So this is where you see the biggest changes.
Thank you for that. Can you put in a context for the audience? So you mentioned semiconductor, not so much without significant investment, but perhaps the medical device, there may be significant. What time frame do you see that?
You see that what I was trying to say is that those significant improvements, we saw them already happening in an industry like semiconductor,
right,
decades ago.
Right.
The improvements that we used to see decades ago in semiconductor, we are seeing them now in other industries that were up to now paper-based or even Excel-based, like we heard today. Right. So, and this is where you see a very significant change. So, I'm not saying that this is not from one day to the other. Sure. And you saw also even Keysight as a technology company, but you saw Medtronic as well. That was one of the panelists, and their journey started 2-3 years ago, and will continue to go. But once you start, so you need 8-9 months to see some benefits, basically to go live with something. Because we cannot forget that we are in a running facility that needs to produce, that needs to do it with quality and with safety, as very well mentioned by Medtronic today. So those three parameters are essential for the production to happen, especially in such a critical business like medical devices. So if they manufacture something that is not well done, it can cause your death, right? Because they are highly critical devices for your health. So this means that it takes some time to get to a point where you deploy the solution for the first time, where you bring the entire organization from a factory, like from the top management that needs to be involved to its full extent and sponsor this, to the operators that are in the shop floor, because they are the ones that will utilize the system. And this can take 9, 10 months, 1 year to get it done. We cannot, let's say, ignore that fact. Once this is done, the sequence of additional phases, evolution, more automation, introduction of additional features comes at a much faster pace, and is absorbed and understood in a much easier way. We heard from Alfa Laval, a completely paper-based company that is now undergoing into a massive digital transformation program for 26 factories, if I'm not mistaken. We heard from them that initially the introduction of the MES, nobody wanted it, because it's easier to put something in paper. Even if you make a mistake, you just realize it 1 week later. But now, with this, let's say, introduction in a phased way, with evangelists of the MES into the shop floor, this is very, very important. They are now, everyone now in the other factories that don't have it, want to have it. And the ones that already have it, they believe that they cannot survive without it. And this is something I've been seeing in a lot of different cases, and actually in different types of industries, including semiconductors. So around 26 years ago, so it sounds like an eternity when I started my journey with the manufacturing execution systems, my job was to create a graphical user interface, Windows-based, for a text-based MES. And nobody wanted to have that because, well, I'm used to text everything. I know all the shortcuts, I know everything. It was like my inception in introducing let's say, a more modern solution where they could visualize everything. So it took me ages to convince the operators that it's much better to have all the information in one screen with the machines, with the lots, with the quantities and so on, because they were used only to key things without even looking at the screen.
Right.
So it's kind of seeing this again, but from, of course, a different perspective and in a different scope and range.
Right, so the operator buy-in is super important, as we learned from the sessions today.
Exactly.
So. Augusto, thank you so much for the insights. And if your audience have a question for Augusto or his team, feel free to leverage the hashtag you see on the screen.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for coming to Portugal this time. Thank you for being in the summit and in the beautiful city of Porto.
Absolutely love it. Looking forward to the rest of the day tomorrow and to learn more about the projects that Critical does. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.